September 1939, the German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II.
Welcome back to Never Forget. Of course, I read the book Justice in Jerusalem a long time ago, and as a 12-year-old in Brooklyn, I listened to the trial with my father. Eichmann was a very important part of our lives as Hungarian Jews because he, more than any one person, was responsible for the death of 600,000 Jews, including my paternal grandparents and my father's two sisters, and about another 80 relatives from both sides of my family. So the Eichmann trial in 1961, your father was the chief prosecutor. Now,
Right.
you were at that time, I know it's not polite to ask girls' age, but you must have been very...
I was 14 at that time.
So at age 14, you had some understanding of what was going on. Tell us in your own words, how did you feel about that period when the trial was on?
You know, just about 2 weeks before Ben-Gurion took the stand in the Knesset and made his dramatic declaration that Adolf Eichmann was caught by the Mossad in Argentina and brought to Israel and will stand trial soon in Jerusalem, my father was elected by the government, appointed actually, as the Attorney General of the State of Israel. Right away, he decided that he's going to be the chief prosecutor. So he called us, our small family, for a small gathering in the kitchen, I remember. He told us that he's going to be very, very busy in the near future because they have to get all kinds of documents and witnesses and prepare a trial. Can you imagine? It was the 60s, no computers, no Google, hardly archives in Israel about the Holocaust. So they had to start it all from the beginning. So right away, the police formed a special unit called 06, because since then they had 5 districts of the police, and that special units was composed mostly of German and Polish-speaking policemen, and their job was to collect evidence, meaning documents and witnesses, against Adolf Eichmann for the prosecution. It was a very, very selective and respectable group of people, headed by Avram Zellinger, and his chief assistant was Mickey Goldman, and he was also assistant to my father in the trial. Another important decision that my father made was that, unlike the Nuremberg trial that was based mostly on documents, he wants to bring witnesses because he wants to let them their opportunity to speak. You know, many of the survivors that came to Israel right after the Holocaust just shut down and never spoke, never told the horrors that happened to them. So he wanted them to speak, and he wanted especially the young generation in Israel to understand that they were really heroes and didn't go like the sheep to the slaughter, which was unfortunately a slogan at that time in Israel. So it was not an easy job because some of the most important witnesses that my father wanted to put to the stand refused at the beginning to come forward. That was, for example, Yechiel Dinor, Katzetnik, that actually met Eichmann at one of the camps. And when Eichmann came to visit, they told him that there is a Jew here who claims to have a visa to South America. And Eichmann ordered to bring him that Jew. And when the Noor came with the visa, he took it, he tore it into small pieces and said and shouted at him, "Dirty Jew, you remain here." So it was a very important, the personal meeting between them. And also, Dino was already then a very known and famous writer of the Holocaust. But he refused to come to testify, and he told my father that he will not be a good witness. So I remember at home, he was invited together with his wife, and my mother baked her best cookies, and they were drinking tea together, and my father convinced him. Finally, he agreed. My parents had at their living room very heavy doors, and they used to close them. But me and Amos, we listened behind the closed door, and we heard all the terrible stories. So I don't know if you know, but Katsetnik actually came to testify, and he started describing Auschwitz, which he called the different planet, and he said, I see them waiting in the line, as if he was there, not in the courtroom, but at Auschwitz, actually. And after a few minutes, he fainted and was taken to a hospital and never came back to tell about his meeting with Adolf Eichmann. There were others that came, a lady by the name of Rivka Yoselevska. I remember because I heard the stories that I didn't sleep for many nights afterwards. She was telling about her destiny. What happened was they took all the Jews from her village to the forest, and they were ordered to dig holes, and then they were shot one by the other. And she was holding her baby, a little girl, and he asked her, "Who do you want me to shoot first, you or your baby?" So of course she couldn't answer. He shot both of them, and she fell into the hole. But somehow she said that she survived. She was all covered with blood. She saw all the bodies, but she succeeded somehow to get out, and she stood there, and two peasants passed there, and they gave her some sheet to cover with, and after all kinds of terrible adventures, she survived, and she had a family in Israel, and she was saying to my father that she cannot come forward to testify because when she tells the story to her family, they look at her very strangely. They don't believe her. So how can she convince a court?
These are very good accidents. Just by chance, these people miraculously, we say, survived. And it just happened. So it's not. So it wasn't this lady the only one that did that. Thank you very much for being with us, and please never forget, but also don't forget to donate. Your donations make this program possible. Besides the Holocaust education that we do all around the world. Thank you. Tami, we are talking about this Holocaust and the trial. I'm 74 years old. You're 1 year older.
Right.
We are not both in a not an ugly way. We're alta kachers, like our parents were. But we remember what our fathers did. You remember how the trial went, and the Holocaust is not just a historical footnote. People have to know what really went on and the surprise and suffering, because all of the Jews of Europe, whether it's in Germany or Polish or in Hungary, they thought they were part of their society. The Polish Jews did think of themselves as being Polish. The Germans especially thought of themselves as being German, and so did the Hungarians. And then already, then there's a surprise. So let me ask you this. You talk about your brother. How old is your brother Amos right now?
My brother Amos right now is 5 years, is 71.
So he was basically 9 years old.
Yeah.
Did you talk about, he was still very young. Did you talk about things together about this, what was going on during the trial?
Yeah,
As, as,
we're talking about it. I was, more mature, and as I
you're
told you,
14.
I listened behind the doors. He just knew that he became a celeb in the school because we didn't have in Israel television then, so everybody were glued to the radios, and in schools we had a transistor all the time. So everybody pointed at me and at Amos also as the children of the prosecutor. My father's name became very, very famous all over. And yeah, we spoke about it, as kids, not as adults, of course.
what about your friends who were 14 years old? How did you girls speak about it? Which school did you go to anyway?
I went to Gymnasia Rechavia, which was the best one in Jerusalem.
Right.
So did Amos. And I want to tell you that in our class, there were 2 or 3 kids that we call them came from there. Like the parents were Holocaust survivors. And actually, they were very, very quiet. Most of the time, they didn't tell us anything. But when all the witnesses started to be heard, and as I said, we had a transistor and we heard it in school, they also became the heroes. And they started to tell us what they remember, what they knew, and kids also remember as Aaron Barak, who was also a kid
Right.
at the Holocaust, and
Right.
he was a מתמחה, stagiaire of my father as a lawyer, and my father asked him to come with him to the Ministry of Justice to help him with the trial, but Aaron said, "Listen, I was a kid, but as a kid who remembers." So,
I remember,
yeah,
excuse me, I remember Mickey telling me this and other people that they did not really discuss in open society before the trial about their Holocaust experiences because most Israelis could not believe what happened. And some actually thought if you survived, you must have done something very bad to survive. How did you survive when everybody else died? Were you a capo? What did you do to survive? And they couldn't, and it was a very negative thought about the survivors, and the survivors didn't talk about it. Some of them didn't talk about it to their children. It was almost a shanda to be a survivor before the trial.
I agree. That's very
Amazing.
true. That's very true. Some of the survivors I know, they told the stories only to the grandchildren. To the children, they didn't say anything. They just didn't tell.
Yeah, this trial opened up a whole avenue of discussions, not only in Israel, but throughout the world, where survivors started telling their children. I was very lucky because I was living in Budapest from the age 0 to 9. And in my house, I lived with my grandparents, my mother's parents. At a very young age, I asked my father, "So where are your parents? Where's my other grandparents?" As an engineer, he was very matter of fact. He sat me down and he told me everything by the time I was 4 or 5 years old. So I knew about Auschwitz, I knew about Mauthausen, and I also knew that my father had nightmares. and he would, oh, 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 he'd scream. And,
Wow.
and, and, and I knew what the nightmares were. My mother told me that, that he thinks about his parents when he screams like that. He also thinks about the torture he went through, but he thinks about his parents and the thought of them being taken to the showers and gassed and thrown into the ovens, and his two sisters that he loved. Uh, this was with him for a lifetime, and it was with me for the lifetime. This is why in 2002, when I met Peter Malkin here in Palm Springs, he came to speak
Hmm.
here. And I asked him to come to Budapest because they're building a Holocaust museum. And we had a big evening in Budapest where Malkin spoke about how he captured Eichmann. Listen, it's fantastic what your father did. It's fantastic what Bar Or, his assistant, did, what Gabriel Bach did. All three of them deserve to be congratulated by Jews all over the world. And the fact that we brought them to trial, and the fact that Ben Gurion sent these seven Mossad agents, and the fact that they kidnapped him and they put him on a El Al plane, the whole thing is more than just a movie. It's a reality of getting just a small ounce of revenge.
Right. Just for that, I want to mention a very, I think, very smart sentence that my father said in one of his interviews. He said that one of the main purposes for him of the trial was to teach the young Sabres here that if Moishele and Shloimele were here, they would fight for our country and form from a state. And if Uzi and Yair, which are of course Israeli name, were there, they would go to the gas chambers in Auschwitz. The difference is that here it was possible they could fight here, and there they could not. And their heroism was to survive from one day to another. I think that's a very, very important sentence. Right.
Tami, you have my kisses.
Thank you
Litrot.
very much for all the
Nothing to thank.
efforts,
Nothing to thank.
and let's hope for the best.
In a few minutes, we shall return after a very short message from our sponsor. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. And thank you for the donations that you have sent us already. And if you haven't, we're looking forward to your help. It's important to do our programs, not only this television program, but the Holocaust education that we do in Central Europe and also in the United States. Ilan Ramon, as we know, unfortunately died going up to space. He was a very, very decent human being, and we had a Jewish and Israeli aviator exhibition in Tel Aviv in 2015, and he posthumously was honored with the Mensch Award. And here's the story about him and his connection to the Holocaust.
One, we have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments.
My mother was in Auschwitz, and I was born 5 years after she left Auschwitz. She was not in a good condition, in a good, after she was she feared from everything, and she was worried about everything and very nervous, and it was not easy. It was influence of our life. We didn't talk about it. After we grew up and we was we got a family, our family, we started to talk about it.
Ilan Ramon, the Israeli Air Force pilot who became the first Israeli astronaut, and Peter Ginz, the kid from Prague who was taken to Theresienstadt, was there for 2 years, and then in 1944 was taken to Auschwitz and murdered at the age of 16. Ilan took Peter's drawing, Moon Landscape, with him on his mission, but very few know how this all came about. He told me that he's a son of survivors. Both his mother and grandmother survived Auschwitz. And then he told me that he's planning to take a few items with him. When I heard this, immediately I asked him, Ilan, you're a son of survivors. Can you also take something from Yad Vashem? So Ilan said, okay. Then I called Yad Vashem. We got the perfect item. And this was Moon Landscape, created by Peter Ginz in Theresienstadt. When I sent it to Ilan in Houston, he immediately said yes. I have a letter here, I just want to read briefly. A letter from Ilan. In his letter to me, he says, as a son of a Holocaust, Auschwitz survivor mother, I feel and know that I carry with me to space the hope and the dream of every single soul of the 6 million Jews we lost in the Holocaust, as well as of every one of the survivors. I have met a lot of survivors during my time here in the United States and saw the light and the glare look in their eyes. Who would have believed that out of this horror will come out an astronaut? They even didn't dare to dream, but the dream has come true. It symbolizes the victory for them and for us. No one could defeat our existence and our hope and future. This is what he took with him. And then the tragedy, and as we know, the day that Ilan died, the day that the Columbia Shuttle exploded, was February 1st, 2003. February 1st was also Peter Ginz's birthday. Peter was born on February 1st, 1928. He would have been 75 on the day that Ilan died. Forever, Peter and Ilan will be linked together in this special way.